Here's what to know before seeing Wicked for good. The new movie is the direct sequel to last year's Wicked. Together they serve as a complete adaptation of the Broadway musical, Wicked, which was a loose adaptation of the book, Wicked, which was a sort of reimagining of the Oz book series that began with The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. The original book was written in 1900, so this story has 125 years of history to arrive at this moment. See, I did the math. And if you think this feels like a lot of stories to spring from this one book, you have no idea. To start, L. Frank Baum didn't stop at writing this book. He wrote a total of 14 books in his Oz series. They include The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, The Marvelous Land of Oz, Ozma of Oz, Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, The Road to Oz, The Emerald City of Oz, Patchwork Girl of Oz, Tick-Tock of Oz, The Scarecrow of Oz, Rinka-Tink in Oz, Oz Princess of Oz, The Tin Woodman of Oz, The Magic of Oz, and Glinda of Oz. Baum passed away in 1919, and the last book he wrote, Glinda of Oz, was published in 1920 after his passing. But other writers took up his mantle as royal historians of Oz, and there are actually a total of 40 books that are considered official canon to the Oz series. And no, I'm not going to name them all, we have to draw the line somewhere. But before Baum had written even his second book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz was adapted for both stage and film. The very first was a hugely successful Broadway musical. There was also a silent film adaptation in 1925, and an animated version in 1933. But it was in 1939 that MGM delivered the movie that became world famous and is probably the reason most of us know about Oz today.
Stay out of this, Glinda, or I'll fix you as well.
Oh, rubbish. You have no power here. Be gone.
The next really significant adaptation was another Broadway musical in 1974, The Wiz, the Super Soul Musical, which is a retelling of The Wizard of Oz but in the context of contemporary African-American culture. It won 7 Tony Awards that year, including Best Musical. 4 years later, it got a movie adaptation called The Wiz. It was initially not received as well as the stage version, but has gone on to become a cult classic. Now, as famous as the 1939 musical was, you'd think there would have been attempts to make a sequel of some kind. But it didn't happen until Disney released the 1985 movie Return to Oz.
You run up the stairs, I will take care of them.
This movie was not really successful at the box office, so Disney waited all the way until 2013 to try again when they released Oz the Great and Powerful. As it says in the title, it focuses on the wizard and his origin story, but we also get origins for the witches. But this wasn't the first time that idea had been explored. In 1995, Gregory Maguire released the book Wicked, which was an adult-oriented dark fantasy reimagining of Oz that primarily focused on the Wicked Witch of the West, who he named Elphaba. There's religious factions, political movements, cultural prejudice, and more. And this book ended up being the first in a 4-part series called The Wicked Years. Light spoiler warning here. The next book, Son of a Witch, follows the story of Elphaba's son. A Lion Among Men tells the backstory of the famous Cowardly Lion character, and the last book, Out of Oz, follows Elphaba's granddaughter, Rain. And then there's a whole other trilogy based on Rain where she journeys to a new land called Maricor. One of the earliest ideas for an adaptation of Maguire's Wicked story came from Demi Moore. Shortly after the book came out, Universal acquired the rights and she pitched her version of the story. But there was someone else who became really passionate about the project, Stephen Schwartz. He was able to persuade Universal to let him adapt the book into a stage musical instead of a film. This of course became Wicked, which is now the 4th longest running Broadway show in history and has made well over $1 billion. It's easily among the most successful Broadway shows of all time. There were always rumors of more direct adaptations of Maguire's book, including a miniseries by ABC that would have starred Salma Hayek, but it never moved forward. As early as 2011, Universal started to plan for a film adaptation of the musical. Potential directors that were considered were J.J. Abrams, Rob Marshall, James Mangold, and Ryan Murphy. None of those came to be, but after the success of Les Mis in 2012, Universal was even more determined to make the movie happen. Stephen Daldry was hired to direct a version where Lady Gaga was being considered for the role of Elphaba. But the project continued to stay in development hell for years, and 2 major disasters seemed like it might be the end for the project: the COVID pandemic and Cats. Despite the reception of Cats starring Taylor Swift, Universal decided to hire John M. Chu to direct Wicked. Instead of trying to condense the 4-hour stage show into one movie, the film was split into 2 parts. Part 1 covered Act 1 of the musical, and Part 2 covers Act 2. And for a quick recap, in Part 1, the story begins with everyone declaring that the Wicked Witch is dead. And they're so stoked about it, you don't even know. They love that the witch is dead.
Good news! The witch! She's dead!
Including Glinda. Or does she? The rest of the movie is a kind of flashback sequence to tell us how we got to this point. First, we learn that the witch's mother had an affair with a mysterious man carrying green elixir.
Have another drink, my dark-eyed beauty.
As a result, when she was born, the witch, known as Elphaba, was green. And her dad, that's not really her dad, hates that.
Take it away!
Later on, Elphaba's mother was pregnant with a second child, and to make sure that this one wasn't green, the mother ate a lot of milk flowers, but this resulted in Nessarose being born without the use of her legs. And the dad's like, this is definitely Elphaba's fault somehow, and he resents her for her entire life. So when Nessarose grows up and leaves home to attend Shiz University, Elphaba isn't supposed to go, until the school's headmistress, Madame Morrible, sees that Elphaba has hidden magical abilities. Morrible then recruits Elphaba as a special student, which makes another student jealous. Galinda comes from a wealthy family and always hoped she would be Morrible's prize student. This results in a rivalry between Elphaba and Galinda in which they loathe each other. See what I did there?
Loathing, unadulterated loathing.
Then Hot Guy Fiero transfers from another university and becomes the most popular student at Shiz. Galinda immediately sees the opportunity to become a power couple and takes it. So when SpongeBob, pardon me, Bach, asks Galinda to go with him to a dance, she has to come up with an excuse. She says that she would prefer if he asked Nessarose because Galinda feels bad for her. So Bach does, and Elphaba thinks Galinda was really trying to be kind.
We deserve each other, me and Bach.
So she asks Madame Morrible to teach Galinda magic as well. Some really heartfelt stuff happens. And they become BFFs.
Did they have brains or knowledge?
Well, actually,
Don't make me laugh. They were
popular.
right.
Meanwhile, there's bigger issues going on in Oz. The wizard is slowly taking away animal rights. The animals are also mysteriously losing the power of speech. It gets to the point that Dr. Dillamond, one of the teachers at Oz, is forcibly removed.
Listen to me! You're not being told the whole story!
At one point, Elphaba and Fiero even work together to save a little lion cub. Elphaba is invited to meet the wizard personally, and she agrees to go in the hopes that she can convince him to stop persecuting the animals. Once there, the wizard introduces Elphaba to the Grimoire, a spellbook that he believes Elphaba can access with her powers. He turns out to be right, but Elphaba doesn't quite understand the spell she casts and accidentally turns all of the wizard's monkey guards into flying monkeys. Elphaba then realizes the wizard and Madame Morrible want to use her powers to take full control over Oz and subjugate all the animals. They need her because the wizard doesn't actually have any magical ability, but what he does have is the power of propaganda. Elphaba escapes, but then Madame Morrible announces to all of Oz that she is evil and needs to be stopped. Elphaba tries to convince Glinda to come with her and they can fight the wizard together, but Glinda chooses not to. Elphaba embraces her powers and realizes she can fly with the help of a broom. And this is where our story ends for now. Wicked for Good is shaping up to be another box office hit, so the question remains, will the story continue beyond these two movies? There's no official news on this and no known plans in the works. The intent was to adapt the musical over 2 parts, and with this new movie, they've done that. But now more than ever, Hollywood loves building franchises out of IP. And now that we know how many stories there are, not just in the book series by Maguire, but in the whole Oz universe, it will be interesting to see if they won't try to capitalize on it. But we'll just have to see. Let me know if you're excited for the new Wicked movie and if you'd like to see more stories in this universe, or if this should be it.